Shut up and sit down.
All right, everybody, Adam and John back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And today we got a good friend of the show, someone who we follow along with, and I personally bounce a lot of questions off about shooting because, you know, everybody's got that person that they go to kind of look at stuff. And many people would think that that's John, but I think John's like my older brother, the guy that tells you this is what you need to be doing, this is what you need to be doing, and you hear it so much, you're like, yeah, I'm going to try it my own way. So I kind of bounce things off of our guest tonight, Greg Litzinger, and so I wanted to get him on here to talk a little bit about some target archery, some shooting, and some form things. So how are you doing tonight, Greg?
I'm doing good. Just woke up from a nap before work, so I'm refreshed, ready to go.
Yeah, we're going to switch gears here from, I think the last time we talked to you, we talked a little bit about your target archery, but more about hunting and scouting and things like that. And when we got back from the Total Archery Challenge in our last podcast, we talked about the struggles that I was having with target panic, and you had posted something that was, like it was like speaking to me, where it's like, do you think target panic is real? So I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, but first, maybe everybody doesn't know, they may follow along with your hunting prowess, but let's talk a little bit about how you got into target archery and kind of how you go about that.
Probably, I'd say almost 10 years ago, I would say. I started shooting 3D pretty regularly, and I bought a faster bow, a new fancy index release, and it was a disaster. A speed bow, new fancy stuff. I just picked up a lot of bad habits, which transcended into deer hunting. I lost 3 deer in a year. I shot 3 deer in a gut, found 1, and lost 2. All straight up gut shots. And it hurt. I mean, really, really bad, because you talk to my friends, like, I never missed. I'd never lose a deer, like, very rarely. But I had an old bow, old heavy trigger release, nothing really fancy. Shot big heavy arrows. And then once I got, with the quote, quote, modern times of the archery industry, my form was exposed. All my flaws were exposed. And that pretty much made me a terrible shot. And I put a message on Archery Talk looking for a coach. And this guy responded, and he was actually like, 30 minutes from me. And this guy, Dave, he's on Instagram, Bow Coach, I think 77 or something. I don't know. He's in 78, but he's not very active on Instagram, but he's there. But him and I met up, and it was like an instant connection. Like, I know him for years, even though I didn't. He understood what I was going through. He was a level 4 coach at the time. He coached, collegiate athletes, and he was a accomplished archer himself. And we pretty much started from scratch. He took my bow and just started making adjustments on stuff. And like, it felt so awkward shooting, but he's like, we're starting from scratch, basically. And I just worked from there. And like everybody, you try and self-coach. It's like self-medicating. It's a long road when you go about that way, especially for me. Like, I have a very active brain. It doesn't shut off, so I figure I can tweak. I can do whatever to get where I need to be. And sometimes you need to take a step back and almost do less. Find somebody that can, teach you some things that you don't know, and you have to listen. And listen, that was probably not one of my strong suits. Telling somebody that, having somebody tell me that I need to change things, it was rough in the beginning, but I seen, results almost immediately.
And then, so did you just use that coaching and use 3D or target archery just as a way to solidify that coaching through the summer, or how did you jump into that?
I'd meet up with him. We punch paper. Like, I can punch paper. It's not my strong suit. I'm a little better now at it, but I would get very bored of it. 20 yards, same thing over and over and over again. Like, my brain's like, this is dumb. What's that over there? Ooh, look at this. So I had a hard time focusing on paper. So they said I prefer 3D, and we would just work on paper. He would give me drills to do at home, and a lot of it was not necessarily my shooting technique, but how I thought, like what I thought in my head. And we worked on, more of the mental side of archery than the actual physical, because you have your basic T form, but you know what? It's not needed to be a really good archer. To be a really good archer, you have to have a really good brain. You can have the worst form in the world, but if you have the same shot process, a mental thinking process on every shot, you'll be a great archer, welder, doctor, whatever it is that you might be. Archery literally is all mental. 99.9% mental. But back to getting into 3D archery, I just was shooting a lot every Sunday, and my coach always asked me if I wanted to compete. I'm like, nah, I don't want to compete. I just want to be a better hunter. That was my whole goal, and my scores kept getting better and better. Go from shooting like the 260s, 270, 280s, and I'm shooting 280s on unknown course with a hunting bow, skinny arrows, heavy, an unknown distance with a bow shooting 260, 70 feet per second, which isn't really fast for unknown distance. And I was shooting really, really well, and I think I shot a 290 one day on a course. It was at Limerick Bowman, and I think the highest score that day, they had like a little tournament like the week before, same course the day before or something. The high score was like a 299 for my class. So I kind of looked at it, I was like, I can do this. This is easy. And that was my first mistake. Think it was going to be easy. So I told my coach what I wanted to do, and I went out and bought a specific bow just for 3D, specific arrows, just so I'm not, get a little faster, get a little speed. And we worked on, like I said, my self-image, the mental process, the mental side of things more than anything. So my first tournament I ever entered, it was a disaster. I built up so much anxiety because in my backyard or shooting by myself, I was shooting high 290s, 300. As soon as I paid that $20 entry fee, it was like shit just hit the fan. Instant anxiety, tension. My hands were sweaty. It was pretty cool, but it doesn't translate to shooting very well. I ended up shooting like a 270 that day, and I was so angry for shooting a 270. It's like I literally started almost at back in the beginning again, because I guess old habits die hard. It's a funny story. Terrible, but funny.
So have you ever shot in any leagues or anything like that? The reason that I'm asking is I'm sitting over here looking at John, and through like the entire story, and as I'm staring at his Rolls Royce of target bows right here in front of me, and he's yet to take that leap into starting into shooting 3D outdoor. Like, we've shot indoor, and I can see I watch him wax and wane, like when he's shooting good or he pulls a shot, but at least in that league, where it's 4-0, but you're still shooting against a bunch of other people, and so there you get that little bit of things watching. So had you shot anything, any leagues, any competitive? So that was your first time?
Yeah, like 3D. I've tried some. I'd go to a place that had like an indoor 5-spot, whatever. I'd shoot with people, but it was never on a regular basis. And it was never when I expected to win. Like I expect to do well in whatever I do. And with anything, that there comes a price with that, because you can build anxiety in yourself because you expect a certain performance, a certain number. Especially with archery. If you're going in to shoot, at least with me, if I'm going in to shoot a 300, if I tell myself I'm going to shoot a 300, I'll shoot like shit that day, because I'm worrying about a certain score instead of the process that I need to get that score. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap. We become very, outcome oriented. We're worrying about a certain score that we need to attain instead of actually working on the process to attain that score. Like if you can take care of the 6 inches between your ear and the 30-foot circle around you, you will do well. If you start worrying about the target, the footing, the wind, the weather, the people next to you, you've already lost. To be really competitive in any sport or anything, like you need to focus on you and what you need to do. If you shoot a 5, it's done and gone. Look at what you need to change for the next target. Did you rush your shot? And then regroup and then shoot again. Choose the next target.
Yeah, I mean, like dealing with that target panic. I messaged back and forth with you and on Instagram, and you were kind of like asking me like, how's my process? What's going on? And John always, again, like, so when I talk to John, everything goes back to the back tension release. And so it's like, I just bought a new release. And so to go to a back tension, and I'll shell out another couple $100 for another release to fix what's between my ears. So it's like, part of me says, and like I said, as we, talk on this podcast, a lot of it is, towards the guys where their bow was a tool. I mean, I just talked to a guy this past weekend who said, I haven't shot that many deer with my bow. I haven't missed any deer. They've always gone, they've always fell within sight. And I shoot my deer I shoot my bow, 5 days before the season. Yep, it's hitting where I'm aiming, and that's it. And the guys look at us that shoot all year round, and it's like, well, what are you doing? And you spend $200 on a release. Well, I don't have $200 into all my arrows in my release and all my camo and all my everything. And so a lot of it is where I try to focus on me, and that's kind of where John is the equipment guy, so I kind of drown him out. But so doing the blind bailing and things like that. And so I shot a ton of arrows yesterday, and I'd shoot from 9 steps and just focus on my process and then back up. And then it's amazing how I can tell when it goes the way that it's supposed to, or where I punched the trigger and I messed it up. And at least now I'm able to realize that. So,
my coach always had a saying, once you set my bow up, and I'm a tinker, I think I came to him after the second or third meeting with something different on my bow. And he was like, what is this? I was like, I want this. He goes, you're not allowed to buy anything for your bow. Because I don't care what somebody on YouTube says, somebody on social media, Archery Talk, whatever. If you come in here next time with something on your bow, we're done. We're basically done. We're done. And I'm like, but you can't buy a piece of equipment that's going to make you a better archer. It doesn't exist. It's the biggest myth. It's the biggest lie ever told. It's a myth made up by a liar. This said release will make you a better shooter. No, it won't. This bow make you a better shooter. Nope. What's going to make you a better shooter? Your brain. You can't buy a new brain. You can't buy anything for your brain. So you just have to work on becoming better. And I took that into account. He would always say, better archery for aggressive spending. And he was so true. He told me that I just paid like look around at people I shoot with from time to time, they always had new gear, a new bow, a new sight, a new arrows, new nocks, new everything. It's like, dude, what? Like, I competed with a hunting bow when I first started. Like I learned how to use hunting bow, and that was my 3D bow. And I never really had a target bow until I was, 4 years into shooting. I bought a target bow. It was like, I think a lot of people, they think something's going to make them better instead of actually looking at what's going to make them better. That person in the mirror. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to get over. Because you have to admit your flaws, and that's a tough thing for a lot of people to do. You be honest with yourself, and that is like that's hard for a lot of people.
Well, I think the point there was just that the back tension release allows you to kind of fast track your form, like that surprise shot.
Well, it eliminates the option of punching the trigger. So, I mean, I went through that same process. I bought my thumb trigger release, and it was great at first. And the next thing you know, I was punching it, and then I couldn't hold on the target. And then I was, like you're saying, I ended up basically screwing my own self up, mind-wise. I was thinking about all the wrong things. And so when I went to the back tension release, then it cleared me of all that. I wasn't thinking about that trigger. I was focusing on, my shot process.
And it's, like you said, the hinges, like actually a spike release, and because I don't like I'm not a very big manipulator. And there's some guys that can. I've tried shooting with a clicker. I'm good at home, and I'm good probably 50% of the time on a range with a clicker, because that clicker is like, and I can start almost timing the shot, even 10 years into this. I don't like triggers. I don't like anything I know it's coming. I just kind of let things unfold as they should. I just keep aiming, and the shot kind of goes off, and usually it's a pretty good shot when I just let it happen. If I force it, it's like, well, it's the worst, because I feel like shit afterwards. Even though the arrow might hit an X, or I might get push out in the deer, I still feel like shit because I rushed the shot. It's weird. I still beat myself up. I shoot an X. I still critique myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll high five myself at the same time. I can't let that happen again.
So with that, like, how do you break down, or what is your shot process? And so what do you say to guys like me, or a guy that had just picked up a new release because, they read about it and it's the cool new thing or whatever, and then they're, putting them into the lights, into their shed, and, these are all things that have happened to the guys in this garage, putting them into the drywall, putting them into the floor.
I'm a big short range work, especially with a new release, because it takes, if you buy a new release, you'll shoot it really well, even because it's new and exciting, and you're not trying to make it happen, and then your old habits will kick in. So if I recommend people to go into a new release, just spend a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks if you got to, shooting at a 20-yard target at 3 yards, just so you can get used to hitting that X. Your brain sees the arrow hit the X. Granted, big X, but you're building this, muscle-mind muscle connection with your bow that's released and the X. And you're seeing that you're building your self-image. You're working on your shot process, and then take 2 steps back, 3 yards back, and then shoot it again, and you'll build that a nice strong base, so you can, archery is a lot about believing in yourself. You can have an untuned bow and still shoot really well if you believe you can shoot really well. So I like short range work to build yourself up, and then slowly go back a little bit, each week, 2 or 3 yards back and shoot, even if you're, like, if I'm pretty lucky, I can shoot 10 yards in my house. I struggle, and I'll shoot 20-yard targets at 5 yards sometimes, just because I need that mental stimulation, like, I am good. I can do this. So, and then a lot of blind bale work. Take tape and cover my sight so I can't see the pins, and just shoot, working on one thing at a time. Release hand for a week. Same thing, just drilling it over and over and over. And then work on your grip, whatever issues you want to resolve. But it's a long process, especially if you have bad habits. Like most people that have been shooting for 10, 15 years, they get into, newer, latest and greatest technology. That could be a hard habit to break, is to shoot better. Because 20 years, 3 months of work isn't going to erase 20 years of shooting like shit or shooting wrong mentally or physically, whatever. So you're going to have your ups and downs. You got to accept that. There's going to be days you're going to be on, days you're going to be off. You're not going to be on every day. I don't care what social media says. I don't care what anybody says. You're going to have peaks and valleys. The pros have peaks and valleys, and that's what they do for a living, So you can't beat yourself up on a rough day of shooting. Learn from it, and start again. Take a day off, and start again.
That's interesting to me. I mean, when I've been shooting the shorter distances, and that's exactly what it was. But I almost look at it in the back of my head. It's not like I'm trying to psych myself out. It's like, God, anybody can hit it from this distance, And I think like over the last couple of years, what we've been doing is, as we prepare for the Total Archery Challenge and going out west and stuff like that, is we are stretching it out and shooting to 100, and it made that 50-yard shot. It built a lot more confidence going the other way. So like that, I think I still have that in my mind when I'm shooting from, 10 feet or, whatever it is. And I'm thinking, yeah, of course you're going to hit it from here, you asshole. Like, move back.
Yeah.
And then I move back, and then I'm like, God damn it, I'm falling back into the same thing. So it doesn't register that way. So
yeah, and that's my coach. He uses the term performance anxiety, because you're shooting at 30 yards, and you're shooting, a fist-sized group. This is a good group at 30 yards. Now, when you go back to 60 yards, you can't expect to shoot a fist-sized group. There again, I don't care what social media tells you. If somebody's telling you they're shooting fist-sized groups at 80, 90 yards on the reg, and they're not getting paid to shoot a bow, like Hoyt Matthews or somebody, they're an idiot, because the best archers in the world, on their best day, can do that pretty regularly. You ever watch these, guys that shoot known 80 yards, and they're shooting good groups, 3-4 inch groups, like that's professional level. The average human, it's hard to repeat that cycle. It's hard to you might shoot that once, but don't expect that every time. When you're doing a study, you take the lowest score off and the highest score off. So your worst group, you take out of the equation. Your highest group, you take out of the equation. You got to find that middle ground. Like for me, I use the 1 inch rule. When I'm on, I can stack arrows at 80 yards, but that's not my everyday grouping. At 80 yards, if I can get 4 hours in an 8 inch circle, I'm fucking happy. I'm a bad man. Some people would say that's not tight enough. Well, you know what? It's 8 fucking yards. That's fucking far. And I just put, a bunch of hours in a, 8 inch group, 8 inch, 9 inch group. I'm happy with that. Like, I know my level where I am. So I usually don't beat myself up so bad. Shooting 100 yards. If I miss a target, oh well, 100 fucking yards.
Yeah, that was what the bad part was at the Total Archery Challenge, is the locals course. So I don't know, 20 to 50 yards, 20 to 55 yards, and I couldn't hit the mountain, let alone the target. And I couldn't find the target, So, and you had said, look at the target and focus on the target, and that's what I've been doing. And so back to that. So, like, what is your process? Like, how do you, when you go into your shot, Like, because like I said, John's like the big brother, and I feel like his big brother is John Dudley. So he's like, this is what Dudley says.
Yeah.
This is what I do. And then he tells me, and I'm like, I can fucking watch Dudley do it too, and I can see you pop balloons at 100 yards every time, and it just makes me want to vomit. So I need to figure out what my process is. And
everybody's process is different. And that's why, like I said, get back to like the self-coaching thing. It's hard to self-coach yourself to excellence. Tiger Woods has a coach. All elite people have coaches. So there comes a point in time where your self-coaching only gets you so far. Like sometimes you need a hands-on approach. Like for me, like my coach moved to Florida, so we do a lot of phone, chit-chatting. And there's some times where I just wish I can go to his house and be like, dude, what am I doing? He gives me stuff I got to work on, and it's hard for me to get back on track, but I eventually get there. But having someone actually physically move your elbow or do something in person is invaluable. Even video, like now, social media, you can, like, I'll video myself shooting and send it to my coach, and he's like, oh, try this. Oh, you're too long. Your arm, So, technology, it definitely helps me out. But, like, my process is more mental than anything. Like, I step up to a target. I visualize, my arrow hitting the target. Like, I go through, like, the mental process, self-image, the imagery. I'm like, all right, I know I can hit this target. I'm going to crush this target. And then I take my shot. I go through the process, same process as before. But this time I actually shoot an arrow. And then when I step off the stake, and I pull my binoculars up to look at the arrow, I run through that shot again. So each time I'm shooting a target, I'm pretty much shooting 3 arrows. Only one physical arrow, but mentally I'm shooting 3. And the 2 mental arrows are pinwheeled X's. And my shot, hopefully it's pinwheel X, but if it's not, I look at it, all right, what did I do? Okay. And then, I make adjustments for the next target. So I'm building a nice bank of X's in my brain, like good shots, good, everything just feels good, because you start building enough of those, that mental imagery in the bank in your brain. The brain doesn't know if it actually happened or if you thought it happened. After you get a couple thousand, 20,000 shots in your brain, all your brain sees is X's. So I'm like building myself up to X's. Like I'm building my self-image to know X's are possible. So I get up to the line, like I would say 60 to 70% of my shots, I don't really have much expectations because I know I'm going to make a good shot. The other 30, my brain gets in the way, and sometimes I got let down, or sometimes I make a shot. And I'm like, why did I just do that? And it's like, regroup and go back to what works. For me, the more things I try to make happen, if I try too hard, it's terrible. If I don't try enough, it's terrible. And there's that little, that middle ground. Once you find that middle ground, it's like shooting an autopilot. You're not thinking, you're not forcing it. It's like boom, boom, boom. And I try and like build that up when I'm in my house, shooting short range, just getting that rhythm where you're shooting and you're feeling good. You're not, all right, hand grip here, do this, stance here, I just want to get in the rhythm of shooting, shooting X's and shooting well. And usually that translates well into the field most of the time.
And so when that doesn't translate well, how do you shake off that shot? I mean, you see baseball players, they say, well, every at bat is, they have so many weird mannerisms, or they're messing with their gloves and messing with their helmet. But if you listen to them talk, that's their way of resetting for each one. And then along with that, how does that transition to hunting? So like last year, for example, I go out and have my first opportunity to kill a decent buck at our property in the UP, and I send one right over his back, give him a little bit of haircut. And it's like, you only get so many opportunities, so many shots, so many, so how do you reset both in hunting and in target archery, and is there a correlation?
There's some similarities, yes. But like target archery, I have a refocusing, technique. Because I keep a logbook and stuff that I'm working on at the time, and I always write my refocusing technique. And each year it changes. Like this year it was I went back to an old one for some reason, but it was a 42-yard ram, 10-wheeler ram with my hunting bow. This had to be when I first got into shooting. It was like one of them shots where I first kind of understood what was happening with the bow, and I wasn't forcing shots. I was just kind of letting them happen. And to this day, that might be one of the sweetest shots I'll probably ever shoot. It's the old walk-off home run where you shoot. Now, I shoot with a bunch of guys, and the guy's like, "That's in the X." And I'm like, "I know." And the guy's like, "You don't have to be a dick about it." But I'm like, "I'm not being a dick. Like, you think I'm here to shoot fucking 8s? Like, come on. I'm not here to shoot X's." But it was one of them, like, cocky swagger moments where it's like, I know it's an X. Like, I know. You don't need to tell me. I know. And that's my refocusing technique. If I'm having a rough couple of go-rounds, I try and work that into my shot process and take a deep breath and visualize that shot. So, I mean, I imagine the clothes. I still remember the clothes I was wearing that day. Like, I remember everything about it. So I go through that shot in my head a bunch of times, focus and relax. And when I'm getting really worked up, I have a tendency of not pulling through the shot if I can't pulling. So I'll focus on that shot, and then when I come to full draw, instead of saying aim, 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 I say pull into the X. And it's my trigger to keep pulling and drive that arrow into the X. Because, and that usually, can, plug the sinking ship for the day, It doesn't work all the time, but it does work. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we shot in PA, and I just had one of those days where I just didn't have it. And it was a struggle. Like 30 targets was a struggle. I ran that shot in my process in my head probably 1,000 times, it felt like. And even that was still just, I just didn't have it that day. And I shot a 281 on a known course. Like it was a rough day. A good learning, because I didn't throw my bow against a tree or walk off the course. But yeah, I mean, if you have a rough day, sometimes there's nothing you can do to get out of it. You just got to try and stop the bleeding for the time being, and it's okay to have those days. They're good learning days. You struggle like that, you need to, I come home, made some adjustments mentally, and I went back to some basics, and I feel a lot better now. And same with hunting, like you miss a deer, you can't think about it. Don't think about that bad shot. Like bad shot's going to happen. You're going to heat a moment. Stuff happens. It's okay. It happens to everybody. So look at it like, all right, what did I learn from this moment? Not to rush your shot, okay? And then use that, as fuel for the next opportunity. Don't beat yourself up over it like, oh, I'm horrible. I shot over his back. My life is ruined. That's just misery and sorrow will drag you down faster than anything. Especially shooting sports. Shooting sports loves misery.
Yeah, that it's so mental.
Yeah,
it's really easy to fail before you even loose the arrow or take the shot. I guess for someone maybe that needs some motivation, like John, or someone who's considering starting their first tournament, like what advice would you have for somebody like going out there the first time?
Just do it.
Well,
don't overthink it. Just do it, because if you're waiting for the perfect moment or opportunity when you got the latest and greatest gear, or you're going to be waiting a long time. There's only certain things you can learn about yourself, unless until you put yourself in the fire. if you're waiting for, I got to shoot this type of score before I go into a tournament. Well, I hate to tell you, you're just giving yourself excuses. Like, just do it. Just go into it and learn what you can. And that's how you're going to grow as an archer. Like, for me, going to my first tournament, after shooting really well, working with my coach, working on the mental side of archery, and getting my ass kicked, and then have people talking shit about me, because people like to talk shit sometimes. I don't know, but the guy was like, "Man, you shot another 5," and it's like, I will stab you in the neck with a knife. Like, I don't even know you. Don't talk to me that way. Like, it made it so hard to finish out the day, but that was like a driving force for me. So it was like, never again. It's never going to happen again. Why did this happen? And go back to the root cause. I expected to shoot lights out in my first tournament. The odds, statistically speaking, the odds of that happening aren't very high. And if it does, odds are you're going to fall. When you fall from grace, so to speak, it's going to be a long, hard fall. You probably won't recover. Because you need those hiccups. Like, you need that. That's how you build your foundation. All right, I'm not as good as I thought I was. How can I get better? And go from there. But advice, shooting the tournaments, indoor, whatever, just do it. You know, whatever bow you have. You got skinny arrows, go skinny arrows. You know, I shot 3 weeks ago with a guy shooting like field arrows, like, 90-meter type arrows. He was right there with me shooting the super skinny arrows. He was like, I feel like shooting this bow, and he was just on that day, and it was like, dude, that's pretty fucking awesome, because he's shooting arrows that are size of a small Allen wrench, and I'm shooting these giant cannons, and I'm like, wow, he's like really neck and neck with me, but he just had the juice that day, So I was like, oh, all right, and it was kind of good for me because it made me shoot better because I didn't want to get beat with a guy that was shooting me.
Well, and we kind of talked about it at the beginning of the pod, before we started here. But with you being you said yourself that you're very competitive, and starting that first tournament, for other people, like, no matter how you shoot or how you prepare or whatever, like my buddy Kyle did train to hunt last year and went in from the first day that he started training for it, said he was going to win it, and he ended up taking second or third. And then this year he won it, the event that he did down in Texas. And he went in with that mentality. And so we talked about, guys like you, who every time they step in the woods expect to kill a big deer because they put you don't go out there just to waste time. And so how does that play into entering a tournament? So for someone who shoots, really, really well, should you go in and say, well, I'm just going to get a tournament under my belt? Or you go in and say, I can win this fucking thing if I shoot the way that I'm supposed to shoot,
It's, that's a slippery slope, and everybody's different. For me, if I tell myself I'm going to win, I'll build up anxiety in myself, and I almost like self-sabotage because I'm not that way. I'm not wired that way. Like, if I go in there and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do well. Yeah, I'm going to shoot well, shoot my shot. Then I do well. If I go in there and I'm like, I'm going to crush everybody, I don't really usually do that well because I'm not wired that way. I love competitions. Like, I'll rise to the competition. If I'm shooting with a guy that's really good, like, it elevates me to shoot good. But for me personally, when it comes to competing, I find best for me is to focus on my shot and I shoot well. Because I can't, train to hunt is a little bit different because there's a physical aspect of it, and that plays well in some people's, gifts, I guess, of talent. But when you shoot like a Vegas round or like a 3D round where it's almost the exact opposite because you're just standing there shooting. So it can be, different for each person, but some guys do well with wanting to be number one. and that works for them. Like I said, I'm not wired that way, so I worry about what I need to do, and usually that pays off. And I do like to win, and sometimes, I get a little swagger, a little arrogance / cockiness, whatever you want to call it. And I'll shoot one in a tournament. Usually it's short lived because the next one I enter, I shoot like crap because that's just not how I go about things. Like I'm like the silent winner. Like I win, it's because I work to win. And I believe I can shoot well, but I don't necessarily believe I can win because if Delaware State this year, I shot really well, and the guy that won first place shot like a 318 or 320 out of 330. Well, if I were expected to go in there and shoot in first place, and I'm going to win, and this guy shoots a score like that, like I've never shot that high, that could mess with your psyche a little bit because it's hard to compete against a guy who's on that day, So you have to find out like what method works best for you. If you're a guy that can take that, performance and that anxiety and use it for fuel, then yeah, go with it, because if that's how you can win, then by all means do it. But if you're a little more reserved, you might want to focus on what you can control versus what like the outside, sources or stimulation or whatever. It's a case by case base that comes with, entering tournaments. Same with hunting. Like if I see a deer and if I pick up my bow, it's automatic kill mode. I don't think about what I need to do. I just do it. And I think that's why I shoot well on deer. I don't say, all right, I got to put my grip here, hand here, stand here, do this. I let all summer long years of practice kind of come in the fold, and I trust myself. I'm going to make a good shot. And 99% of the time, it's good,
Well, and that's one of the things that, I sent you over some things that I kind of wanted to talk about. I hear it so much, I think, from Frank and, myself. I've maybe adopted it a little bit, and, I don't have that competitive like edge, but there's a lot of times where you'll hear guys say, well, that's just shooting paper. I can't shoot paper. I can kill animals, and I think like kind of what you said there was you say, I've done this a whole bunch of times. I know that I can do it, and I'm going to do that. That's one thing that I struggle with shooting, not shooting for X's or shooting for 12 rings or, just shooting a Mackenzie target in your backyard, a deer target, and they say, pick a spot. And it's like, well, if I'm shooting deer, like I've always just, went about halfway back, a little bit back from the front shoulder and halfway up and down and, middle of the lung somewhere. Well, that's not where the 12 ring is. And that's not where I can't pick, they say pick a spot, aim small, miss small. And it's like, I just picked that general vicinity and, and so people say, I kill animals. I don't have a problem doing this. And like, I grew up pie plate accuracy, not shooting.
I think part of that was, what he was saying, or correct me if I'm wrong, is that he's letting his shot process, all that stuff, just subconsciously react. He knows he's going to kill a deer, and all that shooting throughout the summer and, the 3Ds and all that. You've already worked on all that, so it's second nature at that point. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like, and half time, like when I compete, I couldn't tell you where the X is. I've just shot enough 3D. Mentally, I know where that X is, and my brain puts the pin where it needs to go. Like there's some days like when I'm on, I couldn't tell you what pin I use. My brain is, I'm like, I'm shooting after 34 yards, and it's just autopilot. Same with hunting. Like I get in that autopilot mode where I'm just seeing like, all right, that deer's 27. I'm going to shoot 27, and the pin's kind of blurring in nothingness. because I'm so focused where the arrow needs to go, and that's all I'm worried about. And it's like, and the shot breaks, and it's like, oh, and if you watch the deer pull up 50 yards away, and you're like, wow, that was pretty sweet, and it doesn't always happen that way, like the deer I shot this year, how I was twisted like across my body, like I had to manipulate the release. So I'm like, man, this thing's not going off, and I'm like, just squeeze and relax. I kind of squeezed my hand a little bit, and the shot went off, but my shot was set up in a way that I can slow squeeze the trigger in a case of emergency. It's still make a kill shot. Be it a point shot, maybe not, but a kill shot, yes. And it's such a rare occurrence that I do that, but when I do usually, activate the trigger constantly, I make a good shot because, like I said, I've done it 1,000 times. So manipulating the shot once isn't really going to affect my shot process or psyche or anything.
Well,
but it's a big. Oh, sorry, I just fell. My stool just broke. Sorry. Just damn near fell to the ground. Oh, Jesus.
Safety strap.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, it's scary.
Yeah, but I mean that makes sense, and especially for hunting, like the advice that you had given me was pick out the target, draw your bow, and don't let your eyes leave the spot that you want to shoot.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Your pin will go there. And John had said that in not so many words, because he left out the part about find the target first. I mean, he says, bring your bow up to the target and draw, which I did, but I wasn't focused on that. And then, like I said, I checked every other apparatus on my bow to make sure all of that was correct. And then I was in the next county. Yeah. And then I had couldn't physically get my muscles to bring the bow on target. But for hunting, that's why, at times it seems just so instinctual, because all you're doing is looking at that deer through your gear. And,
or turkey.
Well, Jesus. Yes. The turkeys. I can't ever live that down. That's
nope. Not 5 yards.
Oh.
That was like a blank bale, man.
It was. I was going through the process. I just was looking at the wrong spot.
The accelerated process.
Jeez.
I think I called it the Forrest Gump.
This guy.
Yeah, it's like I tell people, we shot a couple weeks ago, me and my buddy, like a virgin place we never shot, and we go for the first target. And it's like, oh, it was like a lot of traditional shooters obviously shot there, so a lot of the targets were close. And my buddy's like, oh man. And I'm like, there's no such thing as an easy shot. He goes, but look, it's only 15 yards. I'm like, then we should X every target. Of course we didn't, because there's no such thing as an easy shot. So it was we both shot well, both of us shot over 300. But I didn't clean the course. Like, I didn't shoot perfect. I mean, granted, I'm shooting unknown, so there's that aspect of it. But every shot, the 15-yard targets, I struggle with them the most, because it's like, it's a chip shot, but you're shooting for points. There is no chip shot. They were all kills. Don't get me wrong, on the animal, they all have died, but you're trying to shoot this turkey, small, an X is on a turkey at 15, 17 yards. It can be difficult sometimes. And then you're like, I can't believe I just had an A on that target. So there's no easy shots, hunting or target-wise. So don't ever fall into that trap of, that's a chip shot. It's only 10 yards. No. The process stays the same, whether that animal or target is 10 yards or 100 yards. It's the same thing. And that's a good mindset you need to have. Because one or two bad shots can, it's hard shots. 1 or 2 bad shots can put you in a tailspin that it's hard to get out of. It could be months to, get that damage out of your system. So having the right mindset on every arrow, every target is viable to pretty much almost anybody.
I feel like we should have done this podcast before turkey season. Now I'm gonna have to rename that video. There's no easy shots. But when you're talking about, when you were shooting unknown versus known, for people that don't shoot target archery or they're not familiar, it seems, kind of self-explanatory, but how does the unknown tournament work versus a known distance? Like, are you?
Yeah, unknown will be, whatever class you're in. Like I shoot hunter or advanced hunter, 35 or 40. And unknown is no rangefinders. You have to guesstimate the distance. When I started shooting, 10 years ago, rangefinders weren't very common, and a lot of the 3D around here was unknown, and so you had to get good, or it would get expensive because you go up to especially if you're shooting like not shooting very fast though. If you're off by like 4 yards, that arrow's gone, or you might get lucky and find it. So it was for me, I like the unknown. I like the challenge of it. Known would be you're allowed to use your rangefinder, which seems to be how a lot of 3D is going. I don't necessarily think unknown will die out, but I think in a few years, unknown will have less people in it than known, because people want to hit the target. And some people, like, to shoot unknown, you have to practice. Like, I practice during the week in my yard, walk down the street with my rangefinder, and I range trees, and now I got kids. I range my kids, my dogs and stuff like that. Now our rangefinder is pretty much on me all the time, and it requires a lot of work to be a successful unknown yardage guy. And you look at the pros that are shooting 50 yards, they're guessing that down to the yard. Phew, those boys are good, man. Known, you pull out a rangefinder, collect it, and then adjust your sight or pick the right pinning and have at it. But for me, known is I struggle with known from time to time, because, like I was saying earlier, I don't know what pin I use sometimes. I look at that, I'm like, I'm shooting for 34. Whether I use my 34-yard pin or not, I couldn't tell you. I got an X, so I'm like, it's good, it's working for me. I'll go to a known course, maybe I got 34, and my brain will be like, that's not 34. We're shooting that for like 28. And it's like, I fight myself sometimes. And I'll shoot high or low a lot of times. And it's like, how do you shoot high or low? You know the yardage. Just put the pin you need there. But my brain's like, no. I got this. And it's like a constant struggle. These last year was my first. I placed third in the known tournament, and I worked for that third place. It was like work, a job. I probably let my bow down probably 20 times that day to tell myself, it's 35, just shoot for 35. Yeah, go with 31. No, it's 35. Just shoot it for 35. And my brain's like, nope, 31 all day. And I mean, this year is the same thing. It's a different part of shooting that I kind of enjoy, but at the same time I don't. Because I don't shoot as well shooting known. I shoot well, but I shoot, a lot better unknown for some reason. I feel better, and my scores reflect it unknown versus known. And that's probably the opposite for a lot of people. But I'm a little, I don't know, slow, I guess, or something. I don't know.
And so, John, the tournaments that you're looking at, the ones that we're saying either next year you want to shoot with the group, is that known or unknown? I
think they were known. I think they.
What are you doing the IAA is big in Michigan, right?
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah, I shot one of them a couple weeks ago. One they had in PA. It was nice.
I'm not sure about like the target, like the scoring rings and stuff. Because matter of fact, well, like they do have. It's called the West Michigan 3D League, and there's like 5 different local ranges that they kind of go through, and they had it set up at our club, and so Adam and I and Frank went and shot it 2 weekends ago before they tore it down, and there was a couple shots where I'm like, man, they were 12 rings, but then there was no 12 ring there. It was like the different scoring inserts where the 12 ring was or 11 or whatever you want to call it, the X was like low in the inside the 10 or whatever it is. I was like, man.
They're like ASA is a little different than IBO scoring wise, and because the ASA you got your 10 and then you got your 12s in there as well. Like around here where I'm from, there's more IBO shoots than ASA. I shot one ASA course, and I shot well, but center punching an ASA target is only worth 10 versus, the IBO is X. So, like, I was happy with my shooting, but like I was saying earlier, I can't see what I'm shooting at half the time. Like, the lower 12, upper 12, I can barely see the target half the time. I'm like, all right, center mass, back of the leg, I'm going to shoot it, grip and rip it. But I got to aim for like a lower 12. I can't see that shit, man.
Right. So that's what.
Guy's like, I'm calling the 14. I'm like, 14? Fuck, I can't see that either. So guys whoop my ass like score wise, but I'm like, I don't shoot that format, and I can't see what I'm shooting at with pins. The scope be a different story, but I'm not getting in that world. I got enough money wrapped up in my bows now.
Yeah, for sure. But that was one of the things that I'm like, so what is the format? Because they had, our range has a mix of them. Like next one you go to, it's got a low 12 ring or something, and the other one's a center. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's
I guess
it's different formats. Up by you, there's a couple in Michigan. So up in the whole Wisconsin, Michigan, there's a lot of different formats mixed into the mix. Ohio, they've got a mix. Like here in Jersey, PA, it's straight IBO. Very rare you get ASA. New York, you get a little bit of both. Down south, you get more ASA. I guess it's your region is what preference, I guess, or whatever method tournament sanctioned bodies that you get to shoot with, you got to contend with.
Right.
But I'm glad I'm in IBO country.
Well, and that was
simpler.
That was the thing. I mean, John, he's usually a high shooter, and we shoot at his arrows, and then it's like we make a great shot, like hit John's arrow, and then he's off, and it's like, oh, come on.
Like,
sometimes if I know I got some good shooters, and if I can pull people's arrows, like I'll have some fletchings, some pink fletchings, and I'll have like a bright color knot, and I'll if I'm on, like, and I got good control, I'll specifically, I see guys that are like drift to the right a little bit, they'll shoot like right on the X's, so I'll specifically aim to the right of the X, and try and play a little mental warfare. So my big bright fletching will be on the 3 o'clock on the X, and they'll shoot to the right of my arrow, and it's like, it's like a mental edge warfare. Not only points wise, but you do that a few times to make the guys you're shooting with. Sometimes it can mess with their head a little bit, and you can gain a few points on them.
So one of the reasons I asked John what he was gonna shoot was because it looks like you just switched up your sight, and it looks like it's a multi-pin sight shooting unknown distance. And I feel John's got both, but I think he changes his arrows so much that he's always shooting, even on the single pin, unknown distance, because he's like, I think I need to have this 2 yards different or this or that. So there's a lot of adjustment that goes into it.
I'm not switching. I never switched my bow at all since
this year.
Right.
But when we were indoors, it seemed like there was a lot of like this arrow,
when
these arrows shoot this much.
Right. When we were doing indoor stuff like last year, I was playing around. I'd go back to my little bit fatter shaft instead of shooting my axis arrows, my hunting arrows, which are heavy, and they're blowing through the bale into the back wall. I'm like, I'm going to shoot a little bit lighter arrow, not a fat one. It was just the standard, the Maxima Blues. And so, but then this year, when we went into our winter leagues, I didn't have time to mess with my bow at all. So I shot my hunting bow with my 80-pound limbs, my 5-pin, target sight, my Easton Axis arrows at 550, 560 grains, and I just blew through the target every week. Yeah. But I shot my best I ever have. I had, I broke my 400. I shot 2 405s out of 420s, which, for me it was, awesome, especially doing it with my hunting bow. So
that's I tell people all the time the best score I've ever had shooting 3D unknown was with a hunting bow. I shot a 315 or 314 or 315 with a hunting bow, unknown 35 yards, and the bow was untuned. I was making adjustments to it. Like, it was the worst possible setup / tune job I could put on it. And I went on a whim one day and I shot by myself, and I cleaned that course, and it was like I shot amazing with, a 32-inch axle bow, hunting arrows, 260 feet per second, 265, and with a bow that was untuned. And I tell people all the time, like, you can't. I'm like, I believe the arrow hitting the X, and subconsciously I made the adjustments, and that was, hands down, one of the best shooting bows I ever had, consistency-wise. Up until this year, like the bow I got now, I'm pretty consistent with that week to week, score-wise. So shoot what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with, for all your listeners out there, if you're comfortable with your hunting bow, just compete with your hunting bow. I've been beat by a lot of guys with hunting rigs before, and I've beat a lot of guys with hunting rigs before. So you don't need anything, crazy. You just need to compete.
Right, for sure. That's the other thing. A lot of guys, I just bought my first target bow, and that was only because I got a freaking screaming deal on it. But I do have my old hunting bow, my double XL, which I was going to turn into. Well, it was kind of my target bow setup, but then I didn't shoot the 5-spot round over the winter just because the time wise I couldn't go to the club 2 nights a week every week. So I picked our small game league instead. So then this deal came up and I ended up getting the new Hoyt Pro Force. So and I got it set up, and that was like the first shoot last weekend when Adam and I and Frank went to our club and shot the 3D range, and it felt pretty good. I shot pretty good. I had a few shots that I pulled off. Plus I was messing with I was changing the speed on my hinge release.
Yeah.
Got rid of the clicker, which the clicker for me was like, sometimes it didn't bother me, and then other times like I'd be sitting there and I don't know if I had thought it already had went off or what, and then all of a sudden I hear the click and it's just about, fling the shot off over the hill. But so
it's that clicker's not for everybody. It's a good training tool. I think, at least for me, I could train with it, but I couldn't compete with it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, it's right there. I don't need to do anything. And it's like, but you still have to execute. You still got to pull through. It's like, no, I'm at the clicker. It'll happen. And nothing happens. And you're like, what the fuck? It's not going off. And then you're like, oh shit, I got to pull. And then by then your shot's broken down, and then you're like,
everything's off at that point.
When it comes to shooting, is to find something that works for you, and if it doesn't work for you, make some changes. Like, I'm comfortable changing my bow from week to week, making little tweaks here, adding a twist, taking a twist out, because I'm I know my bow from tweaking it and messing it with all these years. Where some guys they are dead set against touching their bow, and sometimes that is a disaster because if their bow's off, you know, it's okay to make adjustments. You know, like don't fight the bow. You know, make the bow fit you. You don't fit the bow. And I put archer challenge from carrying the bow. My left hand got all tensed up, and I couldn't hold my sight bubble level. So I actually swung out my sidebar like 3 ticks over, just so my sight would level out. And I started shooting a lot better. The bow looked so weird, but just from carrying that bow for 2 days, like I shouldn't have carried it with my left hand, but you know you do. And I got like my forearm all tensed up on me, and I couldn't get the grip of the bow to sit right. So I was shooting. My left and right was way off, you know, on the incline, decline. So I actually adjusted my sidebar, and my buddy Rick was like, I don't know why you're doing that. And it was like, well, I'm not shooting well, so I'll make adjustments. And he would he would muscle through it, but I know better. I'm not going to muscle through it, you know, I'm going to make some changes. So I kicked it out and started shooting like really well. I'm like, oh, I'm not fighting the bow now. The bow's kind of sitting where it needs to be. And now, it's actually still set up the same way. If I pull back now, the sidebar's so far left, it literally just pulls both to the left. And I was like, oh. But for that moment, that instance, you know, it was working for me.
Yeah, John was just shooting me like a death stare because I don't ever adjust anything. It's got to be me. Can't be the bow.
I'm like, shit changes, dude. If something's, even if it is you, and just like what you were saying, something happens, and it's like, well, make an adjustment. You know, do something. I mean, that's why you have, the clickers on your sight and everything. Do a couple clicks. Even if it's mental. I mean, like, you do 3 clicks on our sights, and it's basically nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But mentally, it's like
that's all you need.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
and
that fixed it.
And when I can, like my class, I compete. I can't touch anything once the tournament starts.
Right.
And I've had some days where like I'm shooting really well the day before. I get to the practice range, like it's like I'm off. And then I kind of think about, well, I was cutting the grass and weed whacking when I was shooting the other day, and I made an adjustment. It's like, ow, I'll be fine. You get to the course and you're shooting left, and you're shooting left all day, and you got to try and like hold off target on for 30 targets. It's tough. It can make for a long day, and it's because I didn't want to say, hey, I want to make an adjustment on the target range, on the practice range. My own, I'm fine. I was fine yesterday or the day before. I'm good. Well, that can make for a long day of shooting when you're holding off where you want to go.
For sure.
Well, I had it this year. I think it was. I'm not sure if it was when we were shooting during the league, because we're pretty. We're starting to make friends, the same guys every year. And they're like, "You're changing your sight right now," and I'm like, "I'm sure everything's left, so I'm going to do it." And they're like, "Man, you're crazy."
I remember Randy. I think it was Randy Ulmer. I remember reading that years ago. If you're shooting well, make a change. It's not the end of the world. If you make a change, a couple clicks, or back then it was like there was no micro adjust, so you loosen and tap over. It doesn't work. You can always put it back. And you gotta tune the bow for you that day, and that's why like on a 5-day hunt, like I look back what I was shooting that Total Archery Challenge when I was elk hunting, carrying my bows the same way. There's a good chance because I didn't really take a practice arrow with me or anything to shoot at, a stump arrow. I could have did the same thing out in Montana. A bull could have came out or a cow, and from carrying the bow and being fatigued and mentally, physically tired, I probably could have made a better shot on it. So now I learned that from TAC, where next I go out hunting, in 2020, I will have probably 2 practice arrows. I'll keep them like in my backpack, and put a big rubber tip on them or something, and shoot 40 yards at a stump or something to see if I'm still on. And if I'm not, make an adjustment. I see it out with during hunting season a lot. Like you beat your bow up, a lot of people don't shoot during the season as much. But you can bump your sight real fast. Your rest could bend, blades could bend, something. And if you're not practicing during the week, the shot of a lifetime might be the shot that you don't want. You know, your one opportunity, you go south real fast.
Yeah, I can.
You know,
I mean,
you can sharpen your stuff all you want, but things still change. You change. Weather, clothes, gloves. You change one thing. You change the input on any aspect. You change the output.
Yeah, do they not have spruce grouse out there in Montana? Because we definitely lose some arrows, and if you're shooting eastern axis, I can give you some grid coordinates where you can climb about 17 feet up in a tree and get one of John's arrows if you run out.
Yeah. We've seen one grouse in 5 days, and I literally could have kicked it. Like it was like I don't know if it was attacking me or chasing me. Like we were running out of water. Me and my buddy, like we were getting kind of irritable because the water was drying up, and I had a splitting headache. He was getting a little hangry, and we're walking through this hole in the cow fence that was there. This fucking grouse jumped up, and then I kind of came back. I remember like kicking, like get the fuck away from me, because I just wanted some water so bad. And this grouse was like in my face, I tripping over, and I'm like, get the fuck away from me. And then like once you come to, like it's amazing how you behave. You don't have food or water for a couple of hours. And I felt the water thing I'm drinking. I'm like, I feel 10 times better. I'm like, oh, the fucking grouse. I'm like, the whole time I could have picked up and probably wrung its neck, And it was like the worst possible time to see a grouse was right there. And it was like, oh, I see a grouse, and it's like I'm tripping over it, and I don't even do anything about it because I just want to water so bad.
Yeah, that's what we did with our practice arrows. We knew we were a little off.
I always have a practice arrow with a judo point or a field tip, just to, from tree stand or whatever. If I get bored on my way out, I'm not going to sit that tree,
Yeah.
And
it's one of the things I know I should have brought them, but you just, you make some decisions sometimes. You look back, you're like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Like, why did I just do that? It's like, oh, I'm an idiot, but you live and you learn.
Right.
Hopefully, anyway.
Oh, man. Yeah. Like, I'm really glad we were able to have this conversation because, like, for us, our platform, our podcast, everything's always about, it's the Bowhunter Chronicles. It's not, we dip into archery, about, trying to get better and, things that have helped us. And we really haven't talked any target archery or, we talk a lot of tuning and things like that. But, from not just a target guy, from someone who, seeks out big bucks and has, I guess, built a reputation of doing it the hard way, doing it the right way, and then to do the same thing, on the 3D course, you kind of have that same perspective of, hunting first and the archery passion. So I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation and to convey some of that stuff, from a bow hunter's perspective instead of just a target archer. Where it's all about the gear and the that sort of thing. So, we've talked here for a little bit over an hour, and I know we could talk forever if we wanted to talk equipment or tuning or whatever. But what I really wanted to talk about was like I said, the shot process and how to get out of your own head, and that's kind of what we did here. And John was kind of quiet. I feel like he's in his own head with shooting, and for me, I'm just starting to get fucked on that whole deal. Like I should have just stayed with my, trigger release and shoot it 10 times a year.
You should have bought the silverback or a back tension to start with. Because I already gave you my thumb release to use.
Shot it into the drywall.
Yeah. I do some coaching here at the house, and I got like a little indoor range, and I'll tell people because I got my bag targets hanging in the corner, and it's like, please just don't shoot my wall. The bag target's pretty big. We stay close. I got like 4 arrow holes in my wall, the drywall. It's like, and each year I'm like, I'm gonna put a horse stall mat up there, and I never do. And then this year somebody else shot the wall again. And it's like, yeah, my own worst enemy. I can't take my own advice.
Well, awesome. So what do you have coming up here, and where can people follow along with whatever you're doing?
Yeah, let's see. Instagram, YouTube. I did a hunting show parody put on my YouTube thing. I thought that was pretty funny. I got a couple new videos up there about a good clean breaking shot on distance. Shooting the cougar at like 65 yards. And it has a small little lane to shoot in, and me and my buddy Rick both absolutely crushed it at the archery challenge. Like 2 inches left you're hitting a tree, 1 inch low you're hitting a rock / tree, and 2 inches to the right you're hitting a big ass oak tree. So it's one of those stressful shots where I pull the binoculars up and I see all the damage to the tree, and right there that almost gets my elevation, like my heart rate up, like, oh, this is serious. And I kind of stepped the game up a little bit in those shots. So some of those on YouTube, that's pretty cool shot from the pack. But we had a couple things in the works that I'm going to try and get together with the Urban Bowman, do some filming with him this month, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, family life's really kind of dictating stuff right now, and work with a new building at work, so it's slim pickings for Greg at this present moment.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was going to tell you after we got done with this, but since you brought it up with the Urban Bowman, John just did a top hat swap while we were up at the Total Archery Challenge, and while he was looking for videos on tuning a triax, your video and Taylor's video come up when you're trying to figure out how to do that. And I'm like, man, we had both those guys on the podcast, So it's funny.
Yeah, it's because I was actually in contact with him when it first happened, and I knew he was shooting Matthews there, and because I can get rid of tear by changing my grip, but the guy's bow, it wasn't working as well for him as it was for me. Like, if I got a bow that won't shoot straight, if you can kind of just change your grip sometimes, you can get a better tear than trying to, like, swap things around. You're better, like, for me, I'm better off just modifying my grip a little bit. But it wasn't working for him, so I tried some other methods and means, and then he told me to swap them out, and if they don't work, call Matthews and get the other, the correct shims or top hats. I'm like, oh man, this is like turning into like a job, And it was like, it's such a straightforward thing when I took it apart. I'm like, actually, I applaud Matthews. It was a very easy method to do it, especially with like my press, my X press, like the bow stays nice and steady, and I literally like, whoop, whoop. I'm like, oh, I can get used to that. That's a lot easier than shimmy cans, can spacers.
For sure. That's one of the nice things about that top hat system.
Yeah. Because it would be nice if they sent you other top hats with the bow. That would just be my preference than having to buy them, because you just spent how much money on a new bow. It can at least give you a few top hats.
Yeah. Should come with the kit.
Yeah. Or a different set or something.
Right. But yeah, man,
it's,
like I said, I really appreciate this, and I really appreciate, you coming out and talking back with us again, and looking forward to following along with your hunts this year, because I mean, for the public land guys, it's kind of a hard area where you hunt. And you're one of the guys that's been doing it with the canoe for a long time. So
yeah, I got that spot, like my one spot I love in the tide. They haven't really done anything. There's a farm field, about 500 yards away from that one bed, 4 to 5, somewhere around there, and it's been just a shit field basically for the last 3 years. This year, there's actually beans, and across the street from beans is another bean field. So there's a lot of beans, and there's not a lot of bedding, like good bedding. So I'm like, ooh. So I need to get in there. I need to take my canoe in there and make sure everything's still good, and make sure my access, that little my little water path to the base, because that spot there, the high tide, I take it in with the high tide, and I'm stuck there all day because the tidal flat. You literally, the canoe goes right to the base, pretty much to the base of the tree. So I paddle in right to the tree, and climb up, and then I paddle out when the tide comes back in. So that spot hopefully should pay off. It's been a 7-year journey on that bed. So I'm hoping this year will be the year. 7 years.
So what I'm hearing there is that maybe the most integral part of that would be the paddle.
Yeah, exactly. Always bring the paddle with your canoe. It does wonders for going places. Especially you don't want to put your canoe in fast moving tidal water without a paddle, because that's not any fun. Not that I would know, but people on the street tell me it's not any fun.
Oh man. Well, this has been fun, man. I really do appreciate it. I think that's all we kind of got for this evening. So
yeah, I try to keep it short because it's a very long. It can be a very long topic, and you can go a million different ways with target panic or said target panic. Best thing to do is have a game plan and work through that game plan. And if something is not right, make some adjustments. And don't be afraid to seek out an actual, real live coach. Self-coaching can only take you so far. So if you got a good, find a good level 3, level 4 archery coach, and it's your local club, and you're better off spending $200 with him than $200 on a release, because that 4 hours with him is going to pay big dividends in the long term. That's a new shiny release
that you're going to get frustrated with and resell on Archery Talk.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're going to sell Archery Talk and somebody's going to beat you up over $20 on Archery Talk, I want 180. I'll give you 160. Here's 180, 160. Come on, man, it's used. I'm like, 180. I'll give you 160. And then you end up selling it for 160 because nobody else is bidding on it. You're like,
oh, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, all right, man. Do appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
All right.
Shut up and sit down.